The silent plea. The signal arrived on a Tuesday morning, cutting through the cosmic background radiation like a whisper in a thunderstorm. Dr. Elena Vasquez was on her third cup of coffee when the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Luna Base picked it up. Unlike the usual chatter of trade routes and diplomatic channels, this transmission carried something different. Something urgent. "It's not random," she muttered, studying the patterns on her screen. The signal consisted entirely of mathematical sequences, prime numbers arranged in complex formations, followed by precise stellar coordinates. No words, no universal greeting protocols, just cold mathematics pointing to a system designated Epsilon 7 on the outer rim of known space. Within hours, the message had reached every major government and scientific institution across human space. The Galactic Council received it too, but their response was predictably bureaucratic. Committee meetings, subcommittee reviews, and enough red tape to strangle a space whale. The coordinates pointed to neutral territory, officially uninhabited, and light years from any major trade route. Why risk resources on what could be a prank or a trap? But Captain Sarah Chen wasn't the type to ignore a mystery. She stood in the briefing room aboard the UES Prometheus, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she addressed her mixed crew. The ship itself was a testament to human adaptability. Originally designed for deep space exploration, it had been retrofitted with technology from a dozen different species, creating something that was uniquely human in its hodgepodge efficiency. "The message isn't asking for help," Dr. Marcus Webb explained, his pale fingers dancing across the holographic display. The xenobiologist had spent the last week decoding the mathematical sequences, and his findings had changed everything. "It's a warning. These numbers, they describe something the sender calls the Devourers. Based on the mathematical models, we're looking at entities that consume stellar energy on a massive scale." Commander Thale, the Regelian military advisor, shifted uncomfortably in his specially designed chair. His reptilian features remained impassive, but Sarah could see the concern in his golden eyes. If such entities exist, why hasn't the Galactic Council encountered them before? "Because they come from the void between galaxies," Webb continued. "The calculations suggest they follow a pattern, moving from system to system, draining stars, and leaving nothing but cold space behind. The coordinates in the message mark their last known position and predicted trajectory." Zix-9, their Valorian engineer, chimed in with a sound like crystal bells ringing. The crystalline being's form shifted colors as she processed the information. "The energy signatures described in these equations are beyond anything in our databases. If accurate, a single devourer could drain our sun in days." Sarah felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. The Galactic Council had voted to classify the message as a low-priority investigation, something to be studied by remote probes over the next few years. But the mathematical models suggested they didn't have years. The projected trajectory showed the Devourers heading toward populated systems, with Earth's sector directly in their path. "The decision is made," Sarah announced. "We're the only ship in range with the capability to reach Epsilon 7 in time. If there's even a chance this threat is real, we have a duty to investigate." The journey to Epsilon 7 took 3 weeks through hyperspace, 3 weeks of analyzing the mysterious signal and preparing for whatever they might find. The crew worked with the focused intensity that humans were known for, adapting equipment and developing contingency plans for scenarios that bordered on science fiction. As they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Epsilon system, silence fell over the bridge. The system was dead. 3 planets orbited a dim red dwarf that barely gave off enough light to see by. But it was what floated in the outer orbit that caught their attention. A massive space station, easily the size of a small moon, its ancient hull scarred by centuries of cosmic radiation. "Life signs," reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Faint, but definitely there. Something's alive on that station." The docking process took hours. The station's technology was unlike anything in their databases, organic curves mixed with crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. The docking bay accepted their ship with mechanical precision, but Sarah could feel age in every movement of the ancient machinery. The atmosphere inside was breathable, though stale with the weight of centuries. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as Sarah led a small team through corridors that seemed designed for beings much larger than humans. Their footsteps echoed in the emptiness, and every turn revealed more evidence of a civilization that had once thrived here. They found the survivor in what appeared to be a central chamber, a vast spherical room with a single figure suspended in the center by streams of soft light. The being was tall, perhaps 3 meters, with features that seemed to shift between solid and translucent. When it spoke, the words formed directly in their minds, bypassing the need for translation. "You came," the entity said, and Sarah heard exhaustion in the telepathic voice. "I am the last keeper of Kethmoran. I have waited 3,000 cycles for someone to answer the warning." Dr. Webb stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. "You sent the mathematical message. You're warning us about these devourers." The keeper's form solidified slightly, and Sarah could see ancient wisdom in eyes that had witnessed the death of civilizations. "My people were the guardians of this sector for eons. We watched over young species, guided their development, protected them from threats beyond their understanding. The devourers came from the dark between galaxies, drawn by the light of thriving worlds." Images began to form in the air around them, holographic memories that showed the rise and fall of the Keeper's civilization. Sarah watched as proud cities fell beneath waves of darkness, as stars dimmed and died, as entire worlds became lifeless husks drifting in cold space. "We fought them," the Keeper continued. "Built weapons that could shatter planets, created defenses that spanned star systems. Nothing worked. They consumed everything. Energy, matter, even the quantum fabric of space itself. In the end, we could only warn others and hope that younger races might find a solution we could not." Commander Thale's hand moved instinctively to his weapon. "How many of these devourers are there?" 7 approached our galaxy. 6 have already passed through, leaving destruction in their wake. The 7th follows the same path, and your calculations are correct. It heads directly toward your populated systems. It will arrive in your solar system within 2 of your years." Sarah felt her heart sink. 2 years to prepare for a threat that had destroyed a civilization far more advanced than humanity. But then she looked around at her crew, at the determination in their faces, and felt a familiar surge of human stubbornness. "There has to be a way to stop it," she said firmly. "Your people were guardians, protectors. Ours are survivors and problem solvers. Maybe that makes the difference." The Keeper's form brightened slightly, the first sign of hope Sarah had seen. "There is one possibility. Deep beneath this station lies a weapon of last resort, something my people built but could never bring themselves to use. It requires a living consciousness to operate. And the process, the operator would not survive." "Show us," Sarah commanded without hesitation. The human capacity for sacrifice in the face of impossible odds was legendary, and she wouldn't let fear stop them from exploring every option. The descent to the weapon chamber took them through the heart of the ancient station. As they traveled deeper, the architecture became more organic, more alien. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with faint energy that responded to their presence. Finally, they emerged into a vast cavern carved from the asteroid's core. In the center stood a structure that defied easy description. It was part machine, part organism, reaching toward the cavern's ceiling like a tree made of living metal and crystal. Energy coursed through its branches in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "The stellar forge," the Keeper explained. "It can redirect the energy of an entire star system, creating a pulse that disrupts the quantum fields the devourers use for sustenance. But it requires a living mind to guide it, to become one with the mechanism. The neural feedback would destroy any organic brain within minutes." Dr. Webb ran his scanner over the alien device, his excitement growing as he processed the readings. "Captain, The energy signatures are incredible. This thing could work, but the Keeper is right about the cost. No living being could survive the interface process. Sarah stared at the weapon, her mind racing through possibilities. This was what humans did best, finding solutions where others saw only impossible choices. She thought about the billions of lives hanging in the balance, about Earth and all the worlds that would fall if the Devourer continued its path unchecked. "How long until it arrives in this system?" she asked. "Days," the Keeper replied. "It feeds on stellar energy as it travels." The death of this system's sun announced its approach. Sarah turned to her team, seeing the same resolve in their faces that she felt building in her chest. They had come looking for answers to a mysterious signal, and instead had found humanity's greatest challenge. But challenges were what humans were made for. "We're not giving up," she announced. "There's always another way, and we're going to find it." The Keeper watched them with growing wonder as the human crew began to work, their determination unshaken by the impossible odds. Perhaps these young beings from a small blue world might succeed where the ancient Keepers had failed. Perhaps hope was not yet lost in the darkness between the stars. The price of hope. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of desperate preparation. While the rest of the crew worked to understand the alien technology, Dr. Webb and 6-9 had made a breakthrough that changed everything. They stood in the Prometheus's main lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing the intricate workings of human neural interfaces. "It's brilliant in its simplicity," Webb explained to Captain Chen. "Human technology has always been about adaptation and improvisation. We've been building neural interfaces for decades, medical implants, ship control systems, virtual reality networks. What if we could create a buffer between the operator and the stellar forge?" 6-9's crystalline form pulsed with excitement. "The quantum resonance patterns show compatibility. Human neural architecture is remarkably flexible compared to other species. With the right modifications, we could create a distributed consciousness network." Sarah felt a spark of hope. "Explain it to me like I'm not a quantum physicist. Instead of one person connecting directly to the forge, we connect multiple operators through a neural network," Webb continued. "The mental load gets distributed across several minds, reducing the fatal feedback to manageable levels. It's never been attempted on this scale, but the theory is sound." Commander Thale entered the lab, his reptilian features grave. "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational distortions at the system's edge. The Devourer has arrived." Through the station's ancient viewing ports, they could see it approaching. The entity defied comprehension, a writhing mass of darkness that seemed to bend space around itself. It moved with purpose toward the dying red dwarf, and as it drew near, the star's light began to dim further. The last Keeper joined them at the observation deck, its translucent form flickering with anxiety. "It begins the feeding process. Within hours, this star will be nothing but a cold ember. The Devourer will then continue toward your populated systems, grown stronger from this meal." Sarah watched the cosmic horror with the steady gaze of someone who had faced impossible odds before. "How many people can the neural network support?" "Theoretically, up to 12 operators," Webb replied. "But we'd need volunteers who understand they might not survive the process, even with the safety measures." "You'll have them," Sarah said without hesitation. She activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. Report to the main assembly bay for mission briefing." 20 minutes later, the entire crew of the Prometheus stood assembled in the ship's largest compartment. Humans, Valorians, Rigelians, and half a dozen other species looked up at their captain with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Sarah had led them through dangerous missions before, but something in her bearing told them this was different. "By now you all know what we're facing," she began. "An entity that has destroyed entire civilizations is heading toward populated space. We have a weapon that can stop it, but it requires a level of sacrifice that goes beyond normal duty." She gestured to Dr. Webb, who activated a holographic display showing the neural network concept. We've developed a way to operate the alien weapon without certain death, but it's still incredibly dangerous. I need 11 volunteers to join me in a neural link that will either save billions of lives or kill us all in the attempt. The response was immediate. Every hand in the room went up. Human crew members stood alongside their alien colleagues, united in their determination to face the impossible. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. This was what humanity brought to the galaxy, not superior technology or overwhelming force, but an absolute refusal to surrender in the face of hopeless odds. I appreciate the response, she continued, but this has to be a careful selection. Dr. Webb will explain the requirements. The selection process took precious hours as the Devourer continued its approach. Neural compatibility, psychological stability, and technical expertise all factored into the choices. In the end, they had their team. Captain Chen, Dr. Webb, Chief Engineer Rodriguez, 3 other human crew members, 2 Valorians including Zix-9, a Regelian communications officer, and surprisingly, Commander Thale himself. My people have a saying, Thale explained when Sarah questioned his inclusion. Honor is not in the victory, but in the courage to attempt the impossible. I have served with humans long enough to understand this principle. The installation of the neural interfaces took place in the station's medical bay, using a combination of human technology and alien science that should have been impossible. But impossibility had become routine for this crew. Each operator received a quantum neural implant that would link them to the others, and through the network, to the stellar forge itself. As the medical procedures concluded, the Devourer reached the red dwarf star. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The star's light dimmed to almost nothing as vast tendrils of darkness wrapped around it, drawing away its nuclear fire. The temperature on the station began to drop as their primary source of heat and light was slowly consumed. Forge activation sequence initiated. The last keeper announced as the team of operators took their positions around the alien weapon. Once you begin the neural link, there will be no disconnection until the process is complete. Success or failure, this will determine the fate of your galaxy. Sarah looked around at her team one final time. Each face showed the same determined expression that had characterized humanity's expansion to the stars. Fear was present, but it was overwhelmed by resolve. They had come so far from their small blue world, and now they stood ready to defend not just humanity, but all the species that called this galaxy home. Initialize the connection, she commanded. The neural link activated gradually, building from a whisper of shared consciousness to a roaring torrent of combined will. Sarah felt her individual identity expand as the minds of her team joined with hers. She experienced Zix-9's crystalline clarity of thought, Thale's disciplined military focus, Webb's scientific curiosity, and the unique perspectives of each team member. Through the network, they reached out to touch the alien weapon. The stellar forge responded to their combined consciousness, like an instrument finally finding its musicians. Ancient systems that had lain dormant for millennia blazed to life, drawing power from sources beyond normal comprehension. But as the connection deepened, Sarah felt the crushing weight of the weapon's true nature. The neural feedback was immense, even distributed across 12 minds. She could feel the strain beginning to tell on her team. The price they were paying for this desperate gambit. Through the forge's senses, they perceived the Devourer more clearly. It was not truly alive in any sense they understood, but it was intelligent. Ancient beyond measure, it had traveled the void between galaxies for eons, feeding on the light of stars and the dreams of civilizations. It sensed their presence and turned its attention toward the station. It knows we're here. Webb's voice echoed through the neural link. It's trying to interfere with the connection. The Devourer's influence pressed against their minds like a tide of cosmic despair. It showed them visions of dead worlds, of civilizations that had tried and failed to stop its advance. The temptation to surrender, to accept the inevitable, washed over the neural network. But humanity had never accepted the inevitable. Sarah felt her team's resolve harden against the alien influence. They pushed back with memories of their own. Earth's blue skies, the laughter of children, the hope of species across the galaxy who didn't even know they were in danger. The stellar forge reached full activation. Energy coursed through the weapon's organic framework, building toward a release that would reshape the quantum structure of local space. The Devourer, sensing the threat, abandoned its feeding and rushed toward the station with impossible speed. Now, Sarah commanded through the neural link. The weapon fired, not with light or sound, but with a pulse of pure quantum disruption that rewrote the fundamental rules of reality in a sphere expanding at light speed. The effect on the Devourer was immediate and catastrophic. Its dark form writhed as the energy it had consumed throughout the ages turned against it. The quantum fields it used for sustenance collapsed, leaving it stranded in normal spacetime. But the neural feedback from the weapon's discharge was devastating. Sarah felt operators dropping from the network as their minds overloaded. The pain was beyond description, as if her consciousness was being torn apart and rebuilt moment by moment. Through sheer force of will, she held the connection together long enough to see the result. The Devourer, stripped of its quantum advantages, began to collapse in on itself. Without its ability to manipulate space and energy, it was just another object subject to the laws of physics. The gravitational forces it had used to consume stars now turned inward, creating a cascade failure that would eliminate the threat forever. As the weapon powered down, Sarah felt the neural network dissolving. One by one, her team members fell unconscious, their minds finally released from the crushing interface. She was the last to succumb, her final thought a prayer that their sacrifice had been worth it. Sarah woke to the sound of medical equipment and the gentle touch of Dr. Webb checking her vital signs. She was back aboard the Prometheus, lying in the medical bay with neural interface cables still attached to her skull. The room was full of her crew, all looking battered but alive. "Status report," she managed to croak. "The Devourer is gone," Webb replied with a tired smile. "Completely destroyed. The quantum pulse destabilized its entire structure. And the star is burning again. Whatever energy the Devourer had taken is returning to normal space." Through the medical bay's viewport, Sarah could see the red dwarf shining with renewed vigor. The system was no longer dying but healing, returning to the natural order that had been disrupted by the cosmic predator. The last keeper appeared at the foot of her bed, its translucent form brighter than she had ever seen it. "You have accomplished what my people could not. The threat is ended, and the path to your galaxy is safe. My vigil is finally complete." "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. "Rest," the keeper replied simply. "For the first time in 3 millennia, I can rest. But before I do, I want you to know that your species has earned something precious today. You have proven that hope is stronger than despair, that cooperation can overcome any obstacle. The galaxy will remember what humanity accomplished here." Over the following days, as the crew recovered and prepared for their journey home, reports began arriving from across known space. The death of the Devourer had sent ripples through subspace that every major civilization detected. When the Prometheus finally returned to Earth with their incredible story, they found a galaxy that looked at humanity with new respect. The Galactic Council, embarrassed by their initial dismissal of the threat, formally recognized Earth as a full member with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. But more importantly, other species began to understand what humans brought to the cosmic community, not just courage and determination, but an absolute refusal to accept defeat when innocent lives were at stake. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus as Earth grew larger in the viewport. Her crew was alive, the galaxy was safe, and humanity had found its place among the stars not through conquest or superior technology, but through the simple willingness to do what was right, no matter the cost. The signal that had started it all was quiet now. The ancient warning finally answered. But in its place, new signals were being broadcast from Earth. Messages of hope, cooperation, and the promise that no call for help would ever go unanswered as long as humanity drew breath. In the darkness between the stars, other threats might lurk, other challenges might await, but they would face a galaxy united, strengthened by the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victories come not from the powerful or the ancient, but from those brave enough to stand up when standing up seems impossible. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was acknowledging what had been accomplished in a forgotten system on the edge of nowhere. Humanity had answered when silence called, and in doing so, had proven that hope truly was the strongest force in the cosmos.